If you work in D2C and you use AI and you're wondering what the F is going on every week, this is your podcast, the AI-DTC-WTF-Podcast, your home for tactical tips, strategies, and ideas that you can implement right now into your AI workflows to make your brand or agency more money.
Welcome to a new episode of AI-DTC-WTF. We have Andrew and Will here. Andrew is working at 50% capacity because he's been going to the opera too often and taking stage and singing a little bit too much.
Yeah, people don't know this, but I actually smoke a pack and a half a day, and it's finally it just affected me. You know, I'm also a part-time performing artist.
Marlboro Red guy, right?
Big Marlboro Red guy. Yeah. And it's finally affected me. And no, the reality is, I have a 6-year-old, and you know, she licks my face, you know, or something, you know, it's like kids do gross stuff. And that's what happened. So I'm sorry. Maybe some people like this, you know, maybe I'll have to like 11 labs and like keep this on, and because people are going to like the smokiness of it, you know, some people like a smoky meat and some people like a smoky voice. And that's kind of what we're doing here.
You're the most interesting man in marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, we're glad that you're here. Thank you for listening. There's been a lot of interesting new stuff that I would love to go through with you, Will. What's some of the newest stuff that's come out? I mean, there's so much. Claude came out with a new model, BT dubs. What's your take on it? What can it do that the others can't thus far based on what you're seeing?
Yeah, so the two big drops this week, or I guess over the past week and a half, were Google I/O, of course, which released Omni, which is their new video model. And then obviously Opus 4.8, which came out yesterday. So I can't say I have a clear sense of how much better it is than 4.7. What I can say is it uses a lot of tokens for commensurate tasks and compared to 4.7. So for example, last night, I was generating like 20 static ads for a client. They were just in Wirecutter. So we just like wanted to spin up 20 ads with the Wirecutter branding, just get that out there sort of ASAP Rocky. And I think it used like 850,000 tokens to write copy for 20 ads,
Oh my God.
which is pretty crazy. I will say though, we have a pretty intricate process where we have 10 copywriting agents, and each of the agents have to give the copy a score of 90 or higher, or else it doesn't pass. Okay. And so historically, I think what was happening is it would just be like, you know what, this is good enough. But I actually think I was on Opus 4.8 max at first, and then I went down to extra. And I found that actually the copy that it wrote, granted it took 3 hours, was very good. Like probably the best copy I've seen come out of Claude. And the other thing I found is that if you have a system with a handful of different skills marked on files, Opus 4.7, 4.6, they would skip a lot of steps and sort of say like, oh, you know what? I forgot that step. Let me go back and do it now that you've sort of called me out. What I've found is that Opus 4.8 doesn't necessarily skip as many steps. It's more intricate in reading your instructions, which is very, very helpful. And then on top of that, when you do /goal, it very much, it feels like when you do /goal and give it a specific, end goal, it feels like it holds itself to a higher standard in the sense that like I need to do all these steps properly and not just like use my sort of human companion to bounce ideas off of. I candidly haven't been in Codex too much. I know everyone is telling me I should be doing more in Codex. We use GPT-2 for image and static generation. I'm just like so embedded in Claude Code at this point, and I just like Anthropic as a company more than OpenAI. So that's just like sort of like a morality thing. But maybe they're both sort of evil. But at the end of the day, I think 4.8 is better overall. I think the reasoning and the token usage are definitely correlated and they're definitely up. But overall, I would say from what I've seen thus far, the copywriting is, as it pertains to marketing, is superior than that of 4.7. Of course, you need to be giving it the right parameters to get good copy.
I mean, what about this new Google thing that's out with the video? What do you think about that?
Yeah. So Google Omni, this is like sort of Veo 3.5 4, I guess. Technically, I think it's great. I think it's, again, probably on par with Seedance, which is the ByteDance model. They're very, very similar. What I will say, though, is Seedance gets pretty expensive pretty fast. Like if you wanted to do like a full claymation Pixar ad, like those things are all the rage these days, or maybe they're gone. Who knows? It probably costs you $20 to $30. What's cool about Google is like if you use Google Flow and just pay for a monthly subscription, I think it's like $200. You effectively get unlimited usage of their models. So you're getting $200, and you can use Nano Banana, Veo 3.1, Veo 3.2, up to Omni. And it just feels like that's a no-brainer. And I think that's just like a slept-on thing. People are probably just using, Higgsfield or Fal.ai or going directly to the interface. But yeah, Google Flow is great. We just built an account, and that's what our team uses when we're generating videos. So now we're saving money because we're not really using Seedance anymore. We're able to utilize Omni within this channel. I will say, one thing I've noticed is that our Fal.ai, where we're generating videos and static, bill has gone way up. It's not necessarily a bad thing because we're generating a lot more statics, and we can sort of get into that, in another episode. But ultimately, yeah, the Omni model is great. It's super solid. I would say probably on par, if not the best video model right now. If you want to animate statics, it's ridiculously easy. Also, product fidelity, it does a really good job with. Generate the ad first in GPT-2 as an image, use that as a reference, and then upload that to Omni, and you can get a pretty good, video. The other thing that's sort of top of mind right now was it June 9th in New York? You're going to have to start disclosing if you're using AI creators. So that's just something to be on, folks' radar. You'll need a disclosure there. One thing, I was on a sales call earlier, and they were saying they're nervous as a larger brand, and they're very nervous even about using hands or feet for AI. So, I did some deep dive in there, and I know, Andrew, you are, you probably have more experience with law than me. But it seems like there's a lot of gray area in this thing where there isn't a lot of explicit language about certain use cases. So it's hard to say for sure, what is going to consist of this sort of AI generated content. If you have an AI persona talking and applauding a product, that is going to be problematic. But if you're just showing a hand, I can't see that necessarily being an issue. But invariably, someone's going to get sued, or I guess, and we'll have to sort of figure that out as we go. But yeah, June 9th, it's approaching quickly. Something to just be on folks' radar.
Good shout. The legality thing, we'll continue to see this, change and evolve over time. I think there's a couple of things you never want to overestimate, which is the competency of Congress to actually legislate something, which they won't. And you also never want to underestimate the power of what lobbying can do, of which there will be an Anthropic and others. It'll go the way of Meta, and social networks. It's not going to be really legislated a lot. So I wouldn't necessarily think about it too much, but state law will become where the issues are. So you just have to kind of be aware of that, be ready for that. Any other major releases we want to talk about, Will?
I think that is sort of the gist of it.
All right, cool. Well, good wrap up, and let's go ahead and get into the episode. Today, we're really talking about, Will, what you're doing with AI. I think that people know about you. They know that you do with AI creative, but let's get into the high level, and then let's go really specific about what you think is the future of this and all that. But first of all, so what are you doing with AI right now in your company?
Yeah, I would say AI
to sell. To sell.
Okay. Yeah. To sell. Sure.
To sell first. Let's frame it up.
Yeah. Okay. So great question. AI has made making sales proposals so much better. So when I get off of a sales call, what I've created is effectively a markdown file. So, we use read.ai. It's the same thing as Granola, AI recording. So what I do is after a sales call, I take the recording from the sales call, I upload that into a Claude, a folder that I attach to Claude Code. And then I have a workflow in which it reviews the call. Then it goes to the brand's website, scrapes products, scrapes product descriptions, and fonts, colors, etc. it'll generate 14 spec ads sort of based on what we talked about in the call. Additionally, what it does is like does a bit of a very quick gap analysis, like what are your competitors are doing that you're not. And that way, like I have one candidly going on in the background right now from a sales call that we went on this morning. The full process probably takes 5 to 7 hours, like doing sort of end to end. But what ends up happening is I get this beautiful looking proposal with 14 spec ads ready to go that I can deliver to them same day, that has like everything that we discussed in the call embedded within the proposal.
Insane.
It's insane.
I mean, insane. So good.
It's insane. And like, we are now, I genuinely believe this, just based on the way our proposals look, and I'm happy to sort of share this with, believe this in the notes or whatever. Like, I genuinely believe, just based on how our proposals look, like we are closing enterprise deals at a higher clip, because it just feels like these people really care about polish. And yeah. And the other cool thing about this system is if you have the brand send over like brand guidelines, et cetera, you ingest that into your Claude code as well. And so like it's, you effectively are creating an agent to QC against brand guidelines. So when you deliver those assets for a brand that really cares that everything's pixel perfect, you're going to sort of hit the mark right off the bat.
I mean, it's so great. Like it's such an easy thing to do. But what I was earlier asking was like, you guys make ads for people utilizing AI, right? But you also wrap in customer personas, and like that's a big deep part of what you do, right?
Yeah, of course. The ad creation is like, it's the last piece of the puzzle, right? Like, I think I talk about this on most of my sales calls. So, and we may have talked about this in the podcast before, so I'll keep it brief. But I think there's like sort of 3 pieces of the puzzle to generate great ads. The first piece of the puzzle is a gap analysis. I've built a free tool, adlib.skipper.ai or adlib.getskipper.ai, where you can put in your brand. It will show you like, these are the personas, formats, angles, and emotions that you're not focused on that you should be focusing on. And it'll give you 10 recommendations on ads to build. That's sort of piece 1. So it's like, you are focusing on these personas, and like, especially for folks that are struggling with CAC, and it's like, we can't get new customers, our CAC keeps flying. The issue is you probably keep targeting the same people again and again. So you've trained your pixel to just like look for the same type of person, right? Like you need to be training people. You need to be training Meta's pixel to be looking for new audiences. So sort of the gap analysis is one, and I'll add to that in a moment. The second piece of the puzzle is time series analysis. I think the antiquated way of thinking about things is, we had that great ad in January. Like, why didn't we ever do anything more like that? Or why didn't we ever hit up that creator again? Or like, we had that, static that did really well. Like, why did we turn that off? Like, this is how agencies and brands talk. And it's just like, it feels like the Stone Ages, because like what you can do at this point is using the Meta API. I would say use the Meta API. Don't use the MCP. The MCP sort of breaks. Even the Meta API sort of sucks, but it's better than the MCP. What you can do is you can pull all of your ads that you've ever run. You can use Claude Sonnet 4.6, and you can tag every ad you've ever created with persona, angle, format, emotion, and ad type. And then you can correlate that to performance. And so you can say like, okay, for the past 5 years, like these combinations have been my winning formulas. And like, here are the ads to back that up. So if you're creating a system where you are never losing learnings, like every learning is compounding on one another. And that's like also why like creative velocity is so important, right? Like the more ads you're putting into the system, and like, I know this is like a controversial take. I'm of the opinion, like for every $1,000 you're spending, you need to be testing a net new creative. And I don't mean an iteration. I don't mean a new hook. I mean like a net new creative, right? Even if it doesn't get enough spend, you'll still get signals that will go into that time series analysis that will tell you, this persona, angle, emotion had a great CTR. So like maybe there's a CRO optimization you can do. So anyway, so we have the gap analysis, the time series analysis. And then the third piece of the puzzle, and this is what we're building with Skipper, is social listening. Looking at what folks are saying in your reviews, what folks are saying on Reddit, on Trustpilot, on Quora, on Amazon, and saying, okay, these are like my core 8 to 12 personas. This is what they care about the most with a product. Like these are the angles that they care about the most. And then what you do is with the social listening, the time series, the gap analysis, you put that together and you have this really nice Venn diagram of like, here's what the gap analysis is telling me to do. Here's what my time series analysis is telling me to do. Here's what people talking about my brand are telling me to do. Where's the overlap? Okay, great. Here's the overlap. Here are the ads we should be creating. And so like when we now have an AI, we call it AI creative only team, but there are 8 people on it, right? Like the whole idea is like there's humans in the loop every step of the way. Like we are not at the point, and I cannot reiterate this enough because I get this question almost every day. We're not at the point yet where you can get 10 out of 10 perfect ads using AI alone. You may get really good ones. Maybe 9 out of 10 are really, really good. But maybe few won't have the safe zone or whatever it is, right? So when we have the center of that Venn diagram, right, we can give that to a creative strategist. The model will say, hey, this is what I'd recommend putting together based on those three things I outlined. The creative strategist will say, great, give me 20 ads, 20 pieces of copy. It'll spit out the copy. Creative strategist will review the copy. Great. If they like it, great. If not, not so good. Again, like I said, 4.7, we were rewriting a lot of the copy. I just did this Wirecutter ads for this client today, and the copy is really good. And so I think Opus 4.8 really, helped out with that. Granted, it took like 3-4 hours. And then the ads are generated. We're just using an Fel.ai API, so it lands directly in our Cloud Code folder. Of course, you can use Higgsfield as well. And then I think where I was being really too stubborn for too long was I was saying like, we don't need to necessarily have an editor touch these up. But as we have been now selling this workflow to enterprise, that's just like not a you sort of need to have that. So
looking at it, yeah.
Yeah. So we have, 3 people in the US that are generating statics with AI. And then they go to our editing team. We have a 24-hour SLA. And what the editing team effectively is, they're just like brand guideline Nazis. They're just ensuring that, the fonts are perfect. The colors are perfect. The product looks right. Everything's in the safe zone. And that's their job. Right. It's just like it's a QC team, because when we're at the scale now that we're generating so many creatives, it's hard to be like, is that going to get cut off by Meta's UI? Like we just like needed a dedicated team to do that, and AI will get you very, very close. I would say of all the AI statics we're creating, 90 we're getting to 90 to 95% of the way there. It's just like those like sort of final touches, right? And especially for the brands that really care about pixel perfection. Like if the logo's size is like 2 pixels off, they're going to be like, that's wrong. So that's where having an editor come into play really makes a big difference at the end game. Yeah.
So this is how you've built what you're doing and selling now. And hopefully those of you that are listening can take pieces of that and maybe even think about it in your own agency. So like, how are you as an creative agency utilizing AI within your creative systems? And also like, what is your creative system? Because obviously you talk through some of it, right? You're going through the process of that's for each client, but how are you utilizing AI in the business to make more money or have more time or, be making great stuff for these folks?
Yeah. Again, it's a good question. Some part of me, I feel like since, I don't know what we're calling it. We call it the Industrial Revolution. Or are we calling this AI Revolution? I don't know. Some part of I think I'm working more hours than I ever have in my life right now, I would say. And I think from folks that are sort of doing similar things, like I have one client that he says he works 18 hours a day in Cloud Code. He's just like addicted to it, right? And there is, I feel like, a bit of a paradox where you feel like you're putting in more work, but you're getting less out of it. So you really need to sort of figure out which swim lanes make sense. I would say the biggest ROI I've found, 1, the proposal game has never been better. 2, CRO. We never did landing pages. We never did landing pages. Landing pages took us like 3-4 weeks. They were such a pain in the ass to put together. If you had edits, like it would take a designer, 4 or 5 days to get edits back. Now with like Vercel, Claude Code, GitHub, like spinning up landing pages has never been easier. So in our workflow, like again, if we see an angle pop off for a specific brand, we just spin up a landing page within the next 24 to 48 hours and start driving traffic to that instead. right? Like it's work, but like the more one-to-one you can go from ads to landing pages, obviously the better. We've talked about this ad nauseum on the Cody podcast, and I don't want to, beat a dead horse here. Like from an operational perspective, I would say at first I was like, we probably don't need to have a project manager anymore. I was wrong. I think having a project manager is actually exceedingly helpful. I like definitely had a bit of whiplash where I was like, I can just sort of automate everything. And I think everyone sort of goes through that period. And then you sort of come back to reality and you realize like the solution is somewhere in the middle. It's AI plus humans in the loop, which I've always been a proponent of. And especially with generating ads, I will say like from an ad perspective and like an analytics perspective, that is undoubtedly changed forever until token prices like increase astronomically. But like in the ability to be able to track how certain personas or how certain angles are performing over time is crazy. It's so cool. Like we just have a graph where I can just like pull up a client. It's like, how is, a mom of 24 to 35, how has she been performing, recently? Maybe she like is an urban mom, right? Like how has that been performing, right? So effectively, we've created a system where when our creative strategists come sign on for the day to start making their ads, they already have a swim lane. They know like, I need to be generating ads for this persona, this angle, this emotion. The question is just like, what's the best copy for it and what's the best format to do that in? The AI can guide you, and I've said this to my team, again, ad nauseum, like the differentiator is taste. Like humans have really good taste. AI doesn't have any taste. There's something soulless about a lot of AI ads that I've found. And that's why having people in the loop throughout the process is essential.
I think it's, one is, I think from the workflow standpoint, and some of you listening to this may really identify with it, which is, I think you were doing a certain amount of work because I feel like I'm working more as well. And then you sort of see what's possible. And then you were able to take on these things that you never thought you'd be able to tackle. Right? Like, and that can mean anything. It can mean your creative system based on hooks, like you're talking about. It can be creative cohort analysis. It can be, what ads have driven the most net new customers. It could be, it can be any of that. And the volume of work, I feel like I'm doing the volume of work of like 3 people now because I'm able to do all this stuff that just was inaccessible before. It just was like, this would take me forever to go through this. And now it's like, boom, 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 got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. Like I built like 4 landing pages for our own shit like last week. And now I've got to tell people about it. I've got to promote about it. And then I'm using AI to write, this and that. So, I think it's big. And we're actually working on a statement about AI now in our organization about like, here's what we believe. Like we need to be transparent. AI augments our work, et cetera, et cetera. Need to be transparent when we're using it. Cause I think we're all sort of in this like gold rush moment, but it's also, we're going to need to come up with some standards, in the industry of what it really means and the changes. I think from a creative from a creative systems standpoint, the fact that you're able to do deep analysis is massive. And if you are an organization that's making creative, I think one of the biggest things that you want to always be looking at is not thinking about volume. It's not just about making a bunch of ads. And I think we know this, but it's about making enough of the right ads and then figuring out what our expectation is as it relates to testing those. And it's also not every ad that you have in your in the community, like in the ad account, right? It can't be all AI. It can't be all founder videos. It can't, that to be successful, we need a mix. And this is what that creative, like sort of analysis and systems can be built. I think that what this is allowing or like can do for us, I think that what it's allowing us to do is build better ads over time and build better like way to categorize and understand where opportunities lie. And it can help you scale faster. And I do think that to your point, a person running project management or COO type of thing or type of role is absolutely the most critical as it relates to this right now. Because what I see in organizations and that the places that I'm coaching and stuff is like people are doing this stuff, which is cool, but it's all running around like with their heads cut off. And you can have a tool like HQ, which is cool, and puts all these projects together, and you can see what they built or what you built, and you can utilize those projects together, et cetera. But that is not going to solve for the why in each of this, right? Or in all this. Like, it's not going to solve for like, what's the incremental progress that we are making? And also the incremental revenue that we are making.
Yes.
And so I think it has to be looked through that lens. And I understand that there's an excitement and like all this, but right now it's very much a noise perspective, and it's not necessarily like moving the needle as much as it possibly could. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said it's sort of akin to a little microcosm of like when like online messaging became available in the workspace. Like you could tell this person you were going to be 5 minutes late, or all these little things, but then it like brought it to a whole different place. And then you're like, wait, where was that? They told me this over here. And so it's like, you have to make sure that you are understanding what the true incremental impact is in the business, or the incremental impact that you want to make, and that all of these things are aligning towards that goal. And like, that's what we're trying to do. And also, we're at the point of it too, where having free thought is useful and messing around with it is useful. And that's good too. And some of that can be, we want to be a leader in AI as it relates to our agency. And by doing that, or in order to achieve that goal, we have to just be messing around a whole bunch. Right? Like, how do you enable your employees to sort of think through that, Will? Like, are you like, look, we want to be putting out 20 new proposals, net new. How are we achieving that? And also, are you taking, like, every employee takes an hour and a half every day to fuck around? Like, how do you sort of think about this?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. It's a hard solve, because I think anyone that's doing this will immediately say like, well, I can just do it myself. Like, it'll be much faster. Like, I've built these systems around myself. Like, I know how my brain works. And that's where I was for a while. Like, I was the one, generating all of the static ads for our clients for a bit, because like, I'm neurotic, I can be a bit of a control freak when it comes to our standards. And then I just like found someone that I was able to sort of just like download all of my brain onto. And then she just like took that and like started going in her own way. And so like now what I've started to do, and we just brought on another person to sort of help generate statics as well, is I sort of say like, hey, here's my framework of how I go about generating ads. This is just like one example, ads as an example. Here's like the step-by-step process. Like, here are all the markdown files I utilize. We're going to send you a website that sort of goes through our whole process. But like, I don't want you to follow this exactly. I need people at the end of the day that are going to, this is like the most cliche line in the world, but sort of like think outside the box, color outside the lines, right? I think I read something the other day, like, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was like Mark Andreessen was to like, people that are going to be most successful in AI are just the people that are just like super unorganized and just like want to be testing a lot of different things, right? Like, and they're just like Renaissance people, right? Jack of all trades, maybe even a master of none. And so like, I think giving people, leading the horse to water in a sense, but then letting people have that like aha moment themselves, for me at least, has been the sort of the critical unlock. Because before we were just like saying like, run these steps in a row and you'll get good ads. And people were doing that and they'd get good ads and they didn't really understand why they were getting good ads. Like, I don't necessarily need someone to just like run an agentic flow. Like, I can have AI run an agentic flow. But if I have someone that is building their own flow based on our foundation and comes up with like, oh my God, we should create this agent, right? This would fit really well after agent 3 and 5 or whatever it is. Like, that is what I want. And, people talk about critical thinking all the time. Like, there are really two ends of the barbell. Like, and I'm sure everyone has seen it. There are people that are like respond in Slack with ChatGPT or respond in emails with Claude, which is fine. But and then there are copywriters who are writing their copy with Claude or ChatGPT, which is fine. And those are the people that are on one end of the dumbbell. They're sort of effectively replacing their work with AI, which is like useless, because like, who wants to be in the middle of the bell curve? Then the other people are the people that are like actually critically thinking and pushing back every second on what the AI is giving them and saying like, this is how you do it better. Like, effectively training a junior employee. This is how you write better copy. This is how, you generate better ads. This is how you think about these things better. So yeah, I think, sort of like the token maxing era is like slowly dying. And now it's like, how can we actually utilize these things to create ROI? Like, we've had our fun. We've been in the playground. We've fucked around. We've made a lot of cool things. But now, exactly to your point, Andrew, like, where's the ROI? And for the ROI for us has been being able to build landing pages for CRO, being able to bulk create a lot of static ads with editors and strategists in the loop, and generating really, really strong proposals. And those have been the three pieces that I've utilized for AI that have really, really leveled up our organization. Everything else is pretty much the exact same as it was before.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so this makes me think about, there's going to be these phases of it that will impact all of it. If you look across our businesses or you look across D2C businesses that we work on, I think we're going to have to establish a bunch of different buckets as it relates to AI. One is there's a governance bucket, and the governance bucket is putting out a thing of what do we believe? How are we securing this data within our brand or our agency? And how are we, sort of utilizing AI in our organization? And this is what it means for us to utilize it. Hey, employees, this is what it is. Okay. And who is going to be the captain of this, right? There needs to be a person or a group of people that are a council in an agency or whatever, that sort of says, because this stuff's going to keep evolving. So it can't just be on the founder, and it shouldn't just be on the founder, right? Like, it has to be on a group of employees, that care, and contractors. I mean, for what, you know what I mean? That's like a governance thing of like, this is what we do, this is where we stand and how we use it. And then this is, kind of the way that we think about it and that. Then the next piece of it is, revenue enablement, like we were just talking about, which is, what are the challenges we face in business? And whether that's unlocking new personas for scale in any D2C business, unlocking new landers for scale. I mean, you could, go specific, but like, I'll keep it high level. Unlocking and understanding unit economics. Great thing that AI can help you with. Understanding and going through, inventory planning as inventory relates to how much money you have in the bank any given day that you could spend on ads. And if you're a subscription brand, there's even more of this. Okay. So like, it's sort of, what is the revenue enablement that we can utilize? Right. And we're going to go from piecemeal project-based stuff of like, add this. Oh yeah. And then I made this landing page or whatever. And it's going to be more like, it's going to have to go under an umbrella of, is this making us more money? And then the third bucket, or a third bucket on this, is employee enablement. So what are the things that you are already doing that you could replace? That's one. And that's where a lot of people sit now. The next one is, what are things you've always wanted to do that you believe would have an impact on the second bucket or on your own time that would give you time back? That will enable you to be better at your job and have you as one employee be 3 employees. Right. And and under that bucket is incentivization. How are you incentivized to do this? If you do better with this and you save 4 hours of time every day, that's great for you. And you save the company 20%, you should get a 10% bonus or whatever, right? Like, how are you incentivizing that under employee AI engagement and whatever? And I think those are kind of like some of the main pieces of how it will do that. I mean, I would say the fourth bucket is probably like a partner bucket of like, how are you communicating and working with partners in your agency or in your e-com business? Right? Like, what are the things that you know from previous conversations that you don't have to repeat yourself? What do you know from previous things that, are in Slack that you could say, hey, like, I know I talked to Julie about this 3 years ago or 3 months ago. What did she say about pricing per pound on tea then or whatever? It's like, and like bringing that together, and how can you make partner relationships 2x, like 200% more effective? Because that is going to make your life easier as well and will allow you to scale a lot faster. And I think, it's like, you can talk about media buying, of course, which all of us are media buyers ultimately. And like, that goes under bucket 2, right? Which is like, how do we make more money from this baby, as well. So anyway, that's kind of like, I've been thinking about how we go through this and what those buckets look like. I don't know what you think, but that's been my take.
Yeah, I think that's a really sound take. It's which company was it? Maybe Uber released, this is how much we're spending on tokens. And like, this has been our ROI. And it's like, 80% versus 20%. So I think, at the end of the day, it really comes back to like, what is revenue generating for you? And I think, and this was a reality check for me, like I just needed to look in the mirror. I was spending way too much time generating shit that we just didn't need, but I thought was like cool. And I was like, I should be spending this time with my kid. Like, what am I doing? Like, and so figure out what lanes you need to be focused on. It's going to be probably different for everyone, and just go in that direction. Like, try to correlate the projects that you've created with Claude Code, Codex, whatever it is, to revenue generated. And what was your costs, and like how much revenue, and like what was your margin? Like, I'm looking at the amount of statics that we're creating right now, and like we probably spent like $7 or $8 grand this month just like using AI tooling. Like, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, oof, that feels like a lot, and we're still have the same headcount. We actually added people, but like it's an extra $7K a month to generate ads that we were using editors for before. Obviously, we're doing a lot more. So, it's sort of 6, 1, half a dozen, but like, just like be super conscious about that stuff, because it's so easy to get taken away, be taken away by all of this and be like, this is amazing, especially if you're using an API, because like you don't see the costs like upfront in Claude Code, or using an MCP, you don't see the costs upfront.
So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for listening, everyone. Hopefully this is helpful to you of our ranting and talking about all this different stuff. And we appreciate you being here. And if you have any thoughts or anything, always email me, andrew@foxwelldigital.com, and we'll look forward to hearing from you next time.
Thank you, guys.